Hi, welcome. This is another sermon for Snowbirds. Of course, it's July, so there aren't any snowbirds, but there are those of you who may be away from synagogue, and I wanted to make sure that this sermon would be available to you. So we're going to be repeating the sermon that we said in Shul on Parshat Pinchas, and just talking a little bit about Jewish leadership. And the question is there a Jewish form of leadership? Of course, there's the old joke about how many synagogue members does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is 29. 1 to change the light bulb, and 3 committees to debate how he should do it. But of course, there really is a Jewish form of leadership. Rashi in Parshat Pinchas, when talking about the replacement for Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses asks for a replacement, Rashi tells us that the leader of the Jewish people is going to be different, because as the Torah says, he's going to be Yotzei Lifneihem. He's going to go out in front of them. And as Rashi puts it, Lo Kedarke Malkei HaOmot Sheyoshvim Bevatehem. This is not like the kings of other nations that sit in their homes, Umishalchem et Chayalateim Lemilchama, and they send out their soldiers into war. Rashi says that there's something unique about Jewish leadership, because in the heathen countries, in the countries of the idol worshippers, the king sits at home and sends his soldiers out into the battlefield. But in the Jewish form of leadership, as it puts it here, the soldier and the leader, Yotzei Barosh v'nichnas Barosh, goes out first into war. The leader is supposed to lead the army into war and literally be in front. Now, by the way, this idea of the leader being in front of the army, the leader taking the greatest risks, is actually the ethos of the Israeli army. The Acharai ethos, the after me way of leading, in which the commanders in the Israeli army basically turn to their soldiers and say, follow me. I'm going to show you which way we should be going. Now, this is proposed by Rashi as a Jewish form of leadership, that the leader actually exposes himself to greater risks. And there's really a very good reason to say that this is uniquely Jewish, because what Judaism does is that it eliminates hierarchies. It actually eliminates the distance between the average soldier and the leader. And as has already been pointed out by Joshua Berman, who's a professor at Bar Ilan University, in his excellent book, Created Equal, as Joshua Berman points out there, he notes that the Torah, the Jewish Bible, is actually the first to express a desire for elimination of hierarchies. He actually compares the Jewish view that man is created in the image of God with some of the Mesopotamian myths about the creation of man that were around in the ancient Near East. And one of the myths that he compares it to is a myth that mentions the fact that the reason why the gods created human beings is because they were too lazy to do the work themselves. And so they needed humans to serve them. Now, as Berman correctly points out, when your myth of creation is essentially that man is created as a servant to be exploited by his superiors, that will carry over into the way that the political structure of your society will be created. That actually the political structure of your society will reflect the fact that those on top only have underlings to exploit them. And of course, the Jewish view that every human being is created in the image of God undermines this type of hierarchy. It undermines this vision of how things should be led, how leaders should lead their communities. Now, of course, this, to this day, remains very much a part of Jewish leadership. And in fact, in another book that recently came out by Dan Senior and Saul Singer, Startup Nation, which was quite a bestseller just recently, this book also talks about how in Israel, the Israeli advantage is really based on the fact that there's a lack of hierarchy. In the first chapter, he actually talks about how that when the CEO or the president of PayPal came to buy a company in Israel, he was shocked how the junior employees had no compunction in questioning and debating their superiors' proposals. And this is, of course, a very important idea. The idea that in Jewish leadership, there's no hierarchy. Jewish leadership is acharai, follow me. The leader exposes himself actually to greater risks. The ones that are following him as equals, not as inferiors. They're following him as people that he's coming to protect, not as people that he's coming to exploit. Now, there's another lesson about Jewish leadership that's found in the Parsha, which is about the leadership of compassion. If the first lesson about Jewish leadership is the leadership of humility, of understanding that everybody is an equal, even if there's one leader, the second lesson is really about the leadership of compassion, where the leader understands that his service is not in any way seen as an advantage, but rather as an act, a gift, an act of compassion. And this is, of course, found just a little bit later in Rashi, when Rashi talks about the appointment of the new leader. So the way it's expressed is V'tzivita oto le'einehem, that you will command the new leader. God tells Moshe, you will command Yehoshua, the new leader, in front of their eyes. So Rashi says, what does this mean? Rashi says that even though the Jews are tarchanim and sarbanim, even though the Jews are annoying and they're stubborn, even so, you need to lead them. That essentially the new leader is being told, you have to understand who you're leading. You're leading a group of people who are annoying. They're difficult. They're going to try your patience. You need to be willing to accept the leadership of this community, afal pikein, even so. And actually, that really teaches us a profound lesson about Jewish leadership. The leader is not somehow ending up with some jackpot when he becomes the leader. You know, what's fascinating about the way that we talk about leadership and the way that leadership has really been talked about in the last 70 years is that leadership is viewed as an advantage. It's viewed as a way to rise up the corporate ladder, to be able to get a better job. If you're a leader, then you'll get a better job. But in actuality, the Jewish understanding of leadership is the opposite. A leader is a servant. A leader has to know immediately, guess what? Your patience is going to be tried. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. And in any kehillah, when we appoint a leader has to have both of these qualities. Number one, he has to be a humble leader. He has to understand that the people that he is leading are his equals, not his inferiors. And number two, he has to understand that a leader has to have compassion. That even if those that are following him are tarchanim and sarbanim, they're annoying, they're difficult, he has to lead them anyway. Afal pikein, even so. A leader is a leader who leads with compassion, who serves his community, and even makes sacrifices to lead. There's a famous story that is told about Rav Meir Shapiro and the Chafetz Chaim. Rav Meir Shapiro was many years the junior of the Chafetz Chaim, but at one point they were traveling to a convention together. Their wagon arrives in a town. The townspeople hear that the Chafetz Chaim, the greatest leader of the generation, is actually coming into town in this wagon, and the Jews in the town all congregate outside, hoping that the Chafetz Chaim will come out and they will catch a glimpse of this rabbi, who's known as the greatest rabbi of the generation. So the Chafetz Chaim is sitting in the wagon and he doesn't want to get out. So Rav Meir Shapiro, again many years younger, begins to respectfully question the Chafetz Chaim. He says to the Chafetz Chaim, why aren't you going out? And the Chafetz Chaim says, well, they're all coming just to see me. I don't need the honor. I don't want to go out and be honored by this whole crowd. And Rav Meir Shapiro says, and so what if you go out and get honored by the crowd? What's wrong with that? So the Chafetz Chaim begins to patiently explain, if I get honored by the crowd, it might go to my head. It might make me a little bit more of a Baal Gaiva. It might make me a little bit more arrogant. To which Rav Meir Shapiro continues to ask, and what happens if you become a little bit more of a Baal Gaiva? He asks the Chafetz Chaim. So Chafetz Chaim now starts to look at Rav Meir Shapiro like there's something wrong with him. Like, this is a rabbi. He should know what's wrong with being a Baal Gaiva. So the Chafetz Chaim continues to say, well, if I become a Baal Gaiva, it's a sin. And Rav Meir Shapiro says, and what if you commit the sin of becoming a Baal Gaiva? Chafetz Chaim says, it's a sin. What do you mean? After 120, God is going to judge me. God is going to send me to Gehenna. God is going to send me to hell to punish me for that sin. To which Rav Meir Shapiro looks at the Chafetz Chaim and he says, excuse me, Rebbe, are you telling me that because of a few minutes in hell, you are willing to deprive all of those Jews the enjoyment of seeing your face? The Chafetz Chaim stood silent for a moment, straightened up his tie, and got up and walked out of the wagon. The Chafetz Chaim understood that to be a Jewish leader, you sometimes have to make sacrifices. Not only sacrifices of your time, not only sacrifices of your money, but even sacrifices of your soul. And that's precisely the great lesson of Jewish leadership. Jewish leadership is not about a privilege. It's not about being number one. It's about leading people when there are risks. It's about serving people even when there are sacrifices. And if you're willing to do that, then you truly are willing to be a Jewish leader. Have a wonderful day.